Ah, HorrorClix, you had my curiosity, but sadly, you lost my attention. As someone who absolutely loves the horror genre, and also enjoys a nice game of Heroclix with friends, you would think that HorrorClix would be absolutely to die for? Sorry. But it's not. HorrorClix is an excellent example of a brilliant idea, but a bad execution? Alright, fine. I'll try to keep horror puns to a minimum going forward, but I'm dead serious about this. The game was doomed to failure for 3 reasons. Lack of licensed characters, lack of compatibility with established HorrorClix rules and pieces, and lack of faith in the product itself. Before we really get into the gory details though, I just have to ask. If you could create a HorrorClix piece out of any horror icon, be it villain or hero, what would it be? I would love to read your answers in the comments below. Now, I can't give Wizkids too hard of a time, because I'm pretty sure it's a logistical nightmare in terms of licensing agreements to have more than just Freddy, Jason, Alien, Predator, and Hellboy, like they did during their original run, but bringing more monster mayhem and even some recognizable horror heroes would generate more interest in the untapped market of horror fans that are out there. This obviously has worked for comic books, as is evident by the constant release of Marvel and DC HorrorClix sets, but we've also seen sci-fi sets do fairly well in the form of Star Trek and the Orville more recently. What better time than now, when HorrorClix's popularity is at its peak and growing, to breathe new life into a serious set of horror-themed HorrorClix? I know some of you HorrorClix players are going to try and point out that Wizkids did make a half-hearted attempt with Undead back in 2017, but that set is a perfect example of those 3 reasons I mentioned before, and I'll touch on that as I continue to break things down. Think about it. Horror has been a major part of many people's lives, growing up and even to this day. The horror genre has even seen a major boost in popularity over recent years through video games and film. If you wanted to capitalize on that, would you put out a bunch of generic figures that nobody knows or has any real attachment to? Or would you go all out with as many familiar faces as possible? With more licensed characters, players can create their ultimate dream matchups like Pennywise vs. Candyman, or recreate bloody brawls like Freddy vs. Jason, only throw in the chosen one, Ash Williams, for good measure. There's so many possibilities to play with. This is where I would like to give a shout out to the Heroclix and HorrorClix community for coming up with several awesome creations of their own, but I think many of you would agree that an official set is long overdue. Another reason why HorrorClix never did catch on, as it really should have, is due to the fact that Wizkids tried to reinvent the wheel. To those who have never played HorrorClix before, learning all the rules, powers, traits, team abilities, and so on can be a daunting task in itself. It's part of the reason I only picked it up about 4 or 5 years ago instead of further back, because I thought the game was more complex compared to Magic the Gathering and other collectible games. I'm glad my friend Dan pushed me into playing, because it ended up being much easier to get into it than I thought. Here's the thing though, HorrorClix decided to come out with its own set of rules, powers, etc., so even though it did make things feel more like playing out a horror film, it was almost like learning another game altogether. Thankfully, Wizkids learned from their mistake when they created Undead, but it's a shame that many of the figures from that set don't have the same combat values and powers for their cost that would make them viable against many of the other more common HorrorClix sets. Even the WWE set, which I love, made minor additions and or changes to rules and powers that didn't make it feel like you were playing or had to learn a new game. Wizkids even provided a set of instructions to use for crossplay with standard HorrorClix pieces. This kind of bleeds into my point about the lack of support from Wizkids. Although I wasn't purchasing or playing HorrorClix during HorrorClix's original run, the most common complaint I've seen from articles and videos from players is that Wizkids didn't do much in terms of advertising these sets to the masses. I can't help but believe this to be true, considering that the only reason I knew about the Undead set was because I saw the Gravity Feed box at my local game store. Even major licensed sets like Freddy vs. Jason were apparently only advertised on the back of HorrorClix boosters, with little else in the way of advertisement. It's hard for people to become invested in a product when they don't even know it exists. All of that being said, I know Wizkids have stated that HorrorClix are dead for a reason, but I want Wizkids, along with any viewers that are still on the fence about this, to hear me out. In order to properly bring back HorrorClix, there are a few things that need to be done. First, and I'm going to continue to beat this dead horse, get as many licensed characters as possible. Brands bring business, it's as simple as that. The more big names attached to the set, the more people will be drawn to it. That doesn't mean you can't have creative knockoffs here and there to help fill out a set, but they cannot be the main buy. Next, stick to what you already have with existing HorrorClix. Balance is a lot easier to achieve with horror-themed Heroclix than one might imagine. Sure, many villains wouldn't have ranged attacks, but this can easily be resolved by giving them move and attack powers, higher damage reducing powers, and any other powers and traits that would make sense for a horror villain. Perfect example, Jason Voorhees. His dial could have invincible or impervious for a defense power, charge and sidestep for movement powers, super strength and incapacitate for attack powers, and improved movement through characters and blocking terrain. Makes for a potentially scary piece to face off against and stays true to the character. On the flip side, heroes, we'll use Ash Williams for this example, can have ranged attacks and other helpful powers and traits to try and level the playing field, since you wouldn't see many with major defense powers. His dial could have probability control or outwit for damage power, combat reflexes and defend for his defense power, and bladed claws, fangs, and precision strike for attack powers. Again, staying fairly true to the character. Little of this matters, however, if Wizkids doesn't properly support the comeback. Rather than sticking to the back of boosters or smart articles on their site, there's little more that they could do that can go a long way. Turn to the HorrorClix content creator community. I would be all over covering a proper horror-themed HorrorClix set, and I'm sure others like Mr. Clixflix, Happy Little HorrorClix, MarioClix, and more would enjoy covering such a set as well. If you're going to release a horror-themed set, you have to advertise it to horror fans, not just HorrorClix fans, if you want to bring in more players. Getting featured on Bloody Disgusting, Dread Central, and other big horror sites can also really generate a lot of interest for the set and HorrorClix in general. I could go on and on about a HorrorClix revival, but you've surely gotten the point by now. So instead, I'll take this opportunity to thank you for your time and ask if you too would like to see horror-themed HorrorClix make a comeback. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, leaving a comment to answer any of my questions or add some input of your own. Also, be sure to ding that bell to remain notified whenever a new video is released on this channel. You can follow me and ReadyComicsRoll on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, along with any other social media we have listed down below. Follow us on Twitch as we do random live streams throughout the week. Join our Discord server to chat with the ReadyComicsRoll crew and other rollers about all the geeky things we all love. If you would like to help our channel grow, head over to our Patreon page and become a supporter today.